Good afternoon, Raja Scholars and Champions. This is Mr. Lawson this week, and it's my turn to present for our Pride Squad to help you understand how we can be safe and healthy during this pandemic and during the summer. The last couple of weeks, you got to hear from Miss Douglas, who talked about our grief groups and helping us to cope with grief right now during this pandemic. And then last week, Coach Mac did a great video to talk about how movement can really help us with physical activity and make us feel better and be able to cope with the things we're feeling. Well, today is my turn, and I'm going to talk about two things. One is I'm going to talk about knowing your triggers and what is a trigger. And then I'm going to talk about, for a moment, the next piece called the upstairs brain, downstairs brain, and we're going to show you a video that's 3 minutes long that talks about your brain and how you can have self-control. We're going to talk about the two parts of your brain. The lower brain is how we react just automatically, sometimes because of our feelings and emotions. And then the upstairs brain, the top part of our brain that controls our thinking and logic and helps us to make good choices so we don't just automatically react in a way that we don't have self-control. Well, when we talk about triggers, I want to talk about what that means, because you've probably heard that before. And when we say, oh, that triggered him, well, a trigger is usually referring to an emotional reaction you have because something reminds you of an experience, often that's been traumatic in your life. Now, it may not always be traumatic. You can have triggers that are really great. For example, my wife bought me these to put in the office to make the office smell nice. This one's cinnamon rolls, and every time I put this on and smell it, it reminds me of this wonderful breakfast she made and gives me some good feelings and helps me relax. The other one is she's trying to help me get skinny again. So we've been going on hikes. Well, she loved hiking in this garden, and so she bought me her favorite flower smell. And she said, okay, when you put this on, it will remind you of our hikes, and that'll make you want to go hiking with me more so you can lose the weight so that you can be healthy. Those are happy triggers. And a lot of people have happy triggers. Some of our teachers will say smelling that wonderful aroma of coffee in the morning triggers warm feelings and helps them take a deep breath and relax. Well, we all have happiness triggers, things that remind us of a wonderful, good feeling and a good time. Another one of my triggers, anything to think about going to Disneyland always triggers me to have happy feelings. But often a trigger is something that reminds us of a traumatic experience we've had. Now, things that trigger you are not inherently bad or good. It's just what matters is how you respond to them. And so, an example, I remember watching Big Bang Theory, one of my favorite shows, and in the show, Sheldon is listening in the living room and Penny and Leonard are having an argument. Well, that triggers Sheldon. He freaks out because it reminds him of when he was a little boy and his mom and dad were having a huge argument and it broke up his family. So that freaked him out and he ran off and decided he was going to run to the train station. Well, that's an example of a trigger that caused him to have a negative reaction. Another trigger that I can share with you is somebody just decided, well, I don't need to wear my mask, and they pulled their mask down, not realizing that sitting in the same classroom was another student who was afraid to come back to hybrid because they lost a family member. When they pulled that mask down, it caused their fellow student to automatically remember and feel all that pain and hurt of losing a loved one in their family again. That really caused a reaction. So we want to remember triggers can be things that cause us to have angry feelings or feelings of fear and being afraid again, but it can also be happy, things that trigger us to be happy. But we need to remember that anytime somebody's experienced a traumatic situation or something that bad has happened, I had a friend that when he was little was in a car accident. And the minute he hears a siren, it freaks him out to think, oh no, and it makes him relive that car accident all over again. So we want to be thoughtful and careful when we think about the things that can trigger people. Sometimes when we're tired, when we're hungry, when we didn't get enough sleep, all those things can cause us to have an easy response to triggers, things that cause us to lose our self-control, or what you're going to see in this next video, cause us to flip our lid and have the lower brain be in charge instead of our thinking part of our brain. Well, what you're going to learn about is in that lower part of the brain, what automatically controls us is our reactions. We sometimes, when something happens that makes us afraid or fearful or emotionally react, we either want to do one of these three things. We either want to fly, run away, get away from it, that's flight. Or we want to push back and fight and stop it, and that's a fight reflex. Or it causes us to totally freeze and we can't move. That's the freeze reflex. What we are going to learn about is how can you stay out of the lower brain and into the upper brain so that instead you can have those happiness triggers and have self-control to be in a place to keep from letting things knock you over. One of my favorite quotes is by a United Nations diplomat in the Middle East who is trying really hard to help bring world peace. And he said this: be modest and be respectful of others and just try to understand them. You know, you won't have the same triggers as everyone else, but we want to be respectful of each other, because right now with this pandemic and the unrest that we've seen in our country on television, right now we want to remember that those around us, there are things that might trigger them to have feelings of fear or of being unhappy about something. We want to be respectful of that. And so I'm going to ask you to watch that video today very carefully as we learn about the upstairs brain and downstairs brain. It's about 3 minutes. Thank you today.